Having a match on a major pay-per-view must be pretty sweet for a wrestler. After all, you want to be involved with the biggest guys in the biggest matches, and when you get there, it's a sign that all your hard work is paying off. If you then get fired soon after, well, that can't be any good for the old brain. When this does happen, it can be quicker than a Titus O'Neil Rumble appearance, because if WWE has decided you don't feature in their plans, there's no reason to keep you around. The door will be open, you'll be kicked out, and then a post goes up on WWE.com wishing you well in your future endeavors. One wonders if the person writing that actually means it. It is a topsy-turvy world though, as we've seen it more than once. Much like life itself, it's probably best to just appreciate the day and wait to see what's around the corner. Bit deep for a list like this, although it's true. Live the dream. I'm Simon from WhatCulture. This is 8 wrestlers fired by WWE after major pay-per-views. Number 8, Jake Roberts. Going down after WrestleMania 8, Jake the Snake Roberts wasn't the wrestler he once was in 1992, or at least not in the eyes of WWE brass. He was slowly being moved down the pecking order despite in his mind feeling like he still had something to offer. Given his promos alone, he was likely correct. Such a position opened up when head writer Pat Patterson was forced to step away after being involved with what would become an ultimately baseless sex scandal, and with the opportunity right in front of him, Roberts asked if he could take it. Vince McMahon said no, and then he punched him in the face. That bit's a lie. While McMahon's reasonings were more out of loyalty to his friend, Jake took it personally and threatened to no-show WrestleMania unless he was let out of his contract. Seems a bit extreme, but whatever works, I guess. Vince relented and let him go, but not after he was fed to The Undertaker on what would be Roberts' last pay-per-view with the company for 4 years. In hindsight, this was not a good idea, although he will always be part of Taker's Mania streak, and I'm sure he finds that very comforting. He got buried by a dead guy. Number 7, Chronic. Quick shout out to that time WWE decided to put a wrestler's name at the start of their entrance music. Always weird that. It happened with Chronic. Some maniac just screamed X-Pac at the beginning of his, and of course there's Christian. Not sure why I focus on these so much, but I do. Bryan Adams and Brian Clark could have had something with Chronic as well, meaning when they were brought across from WCW, I for one hoped to see whatever that was. I was wrong. It's rare for someone to perform so badly that WWE thinks twice about having them on their books, but the pair's match at Unforgiven 2001 was deemed so awful that soon afterwards they were indeed let go. If you need to know how terrible this was, at one point Paul Heyman, who was on commentary, broke character so he could scream at Clark to get in the right position. At the time, Heyman was also meant to be Chronic's biggest supporter in the realms of kayfabe. None of this was good. It wasn't like that was the end of it either. Because the Bryans were in the ring with Kane and The Undertaker, 2 WWE legends basically, they also raised the ire of them. Taker was so mad that he was made to look like a chump that he went off on one backstage at both of them, and officials, this was not up to the WWE standard. It meant Adams was sent to developmental, and when Clark refused, he was sacked. Clearly it didn't go so well for the former Crush either, as he was kicked out before the end of the year as well. Now that is a bad pay-per-view fallout. Number 6, Ken Patera. A man who will be called strong until the earth we inhabit explodes into 1,000 pieces. By 1988, Ken Patera was experiencing quite the WWE run. Staying true for over 10 years, Patera was coming up to 50 years of age when he found himself in a brace following a nasty biceps injury, and the feeling was maybe the gig was done. A shame in many ways, given that a year prior he had been at Survivor Series as part of Hulk Hogan's victorious team and had had a babyface turn against his former manager Bobby Heenan, which ended in a dramatic MSG sellout. Time waits for no man though, as higher-ups started to consider about saying goodbye to Ken. He was booked to lose to a lot of up-and-comers, such as the Red Rooster and One Man Gang, as the commentary team laid into him, maybe a little bit too hard. If you weren't aware that Patera was getting on or that he was past his peak, the announcers were more than happy to enlighten you. It was the end for Ken, and while you'd assume there was some grand send-off, instead, as soon as his match at the Survivor Series was over, where again he was part of a losing team, he got let go. Talk about a quick exit, eh? A decade's worth of destruction, or the odd jab in this case, and then you're out on your ass. Number 5, Big Cass. The story of Big Cass and Enzo is just crazy. Super over in NXT and bringing that success to the main roster, they managed to be beloved by the crowd for so long even though they never won any kind of gold. They were basically just there spouting catchphrases about height education. It was always going to be a bad idea to split them up, but I'm not sure anyone predicted that doing so would signal the end of their WWE careers. We should have known. It seemed as if Cass was aware of his fate when he walked out of the Money in the Bank in 2018. Although he was meant to be a serious tough guy, he had a huge smile etched onto his face as if the thought of facing Daniel Bryan was a joke. He should have thought about this better because the man half his size schooled him in the ring and beat him easily. If Cass had at least looked like he knew he had a fight on his hands, being on the wrong end of victory wouldn't have been as bad as it was. As it turned out, this was the end of Cass's WWE run as management was fed up of his backstage behavior, including apparently kicking down a bathroom door on a bus. The oddest part of the story was that he also ignored Vince McMahon's orders about not beating up a little person during an angle. Cass thought he knew best. It took just 48 hours to tell him not to come back following the pay-per-view, and all of this after he was meant to have a main event heel run. Number 4, Bart Gunn. Ever since Bart Gunn won the Brawl for All, there's been nonsense going around the internet that he was then punished for daring to knock out intended winner Steve Williams, despite the tournament being as legit as they come. What's WWE gonna do? The rest of the show was already worked, so how could you then work the real stuff? In hindsight, I'm sure Bart regrets winning that, given that at WrestleMania 15 he was put in another boxing match with Butterbean and basically got murdered in seconds. Because of course he did. While he wasn't a super pro, Butterbean still did this for a living, whereas Gunn had been punching other wrestlers in the face. It didn't take a genius to figure out this was not the way to capitalize on Bart's success, even if he was well compensated for it. It was a humiliation, even if that wasn't the intent, and any value he had was wiped out in 40 seconds. Nobody in WWE knew what to do with the former tag team specialist after this, so instead he was let go after the WrestleMania hoopla had calmed down. I mean, it's unlikely that management was ever going to push Gunn to the moon, but still, all this because he won the Brawl for All. Wonders never cease. Number 3, The Ultimate Warrior. The Ultimate Warrior was mad before SummerSlam 1991. Not pleased with how much Hulk Hogan was paid at WrestleMania 7, which was obviously more than his, he said he was gonna chill out in parts unknown until this got sorted out. As you can imagine, this didn't sit well with the office. Vince McMahon bit back, explaining that he disagreed the two's worth was on the same level, which surely was like showing a red rag to a bull. He couldn't afford to lose his second biggest draw mere weeks before the August pay-per-view, however, so through gritted teeth agreed to this and bowed to the Warrior's demands. This too would be a mistake because, again, giving the Ultimate One an inch meant that he was always going to take a mile. It's why everybody involved fell out with each other. As it turned out, this was a classic McMahon play, as he had one final trick up his sleeve. As soon as the SummerSlam match was done, Vince told Warrior that he was indefinitely suspending him, which is basically firing someone, and that any agreements made in the last few weeks were void because of it. Jeez my knees. It took until the following Mania before they were able to get back on the same page, but even that wasn't smooth. Everybody said it was clearly a different person and that WWE had made up a new version of the Ultimate Warrior. What a weird thing pro wrestling is. It's not like Aunt Viv in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air now, is it? Number 2, The Cat. Stacy Carter didn't really seem to be all that interested in pro wrestling, or at least the athletic side of it. But throughout 1999, the Cat character seemed more keen on focusing on the aesthetic rather than ability, and more power to her if that's what she wanted to do. It worked out pretty well back then, because it's also what WWE wanted to focus on. A match made in heaven. Well, kind of. While she would do anything in front of camera, it seemed, behind the scenes there was always murmurings that she wasn't the easiest person to deal with. Along with getting a big push and being Jerry Lawler's then wife, Carter, it is said, started acting like she owned the place, which did not go down well at all. This led to disagreements with creative and her fellow wrestlers, and before long she was a source of stress, even if in her mind she was untouchable. That turned out not to be true. Just days after No Way Out 2001, where she had been involved in an angle with her husband and Right to Censor, management decided that she was too much and she was let go. That story then vanished into dust. The King left alongside her in protest, but when the couple parted ways in July 2001, he soon made his way back to the WWE. Like a carrier pigeon. Number 1, Umaga. Looking back at Edward Fatu's life today is tragic. While Umaga sounds like one of those WWE creations that was just bad all round, he soon transformed it into an absolute beast of a heel that could be used in any situation. Need someone to be destroyed? Get Umaga. Have to think of an idea to stop CM Punk cashing in his briefcase? Get Umaga. Looking for an opponent for John Cena? Get Umaga. No matter what was thrown his way, he smashed it, and it made his persona more than believable. It really was quite amazing. The Punk feud especially rocked. When they clashed at Judgment Day 2009, Umaga was all over the straight edge one before being usurped at Extreme Rules in a Samoan strap match. The next day though, Umaga was fired and nobody knew why. It was bizarre. As it turned out, Fatu had refused to enter a rehab program following his second wellness policy violation. Just to make this all the more sad, 6 months later he died of a heart attack because of drugs. He was only 36 years old. Go and check him out on the network though. He was one underrated talent.